up to the Gemara over here. We're talking about a woman while waiting to marry her brother-in-law, her status, if she inherits properties, what happens to those properties, whether she can unsell them or not. And we said that everyone agrees, Besham and Basil, that she can answer what it wants. The connection to her brother-in-law is not as strong. Okay, Iboilu Shemedes Yavam Shemesa. What about this woman who's in waiting? And if she dies, me Koivra. Who is the one that actually has to now spend the money and pay for her burial? The question is as follows. Yorshe Habal Karla, do we say? Now we said before that if the wife passes away before the husband, so what happens to her ksuva remains with the husband, and the trade-off is he has to use some of that money to pay for her kavura. And sometimes it could even be more than the ksuva, but that's the risk you take. In other words, the kavura is in the place of the ksuva. In fact, according to the Gemara before, it's not so much the ksuva itself; it's more the dowry, the nadan that he keeps, and in exchange for the dowry, he has to pay for the kavura for all of these expenses. So the Gemara wants to know. And according to Taisus, it also includes nifta termazel. The Gemara wants to know with another chas. The Gemara wants to know, in the case of a yavam, does the yavam, since the yavam gets to keep the ksuva, does he have to pay for the burial? So Yoshe Ba'al Karula, that the husband's family has to pay for the burial because they're the ones who are keeping the ksuva. Well, maybe no. In this case, it's her family that has to bury her because they keep the nichsim alaygu. It says in our Mishnah, what happens to nichsim alaygu, the properties? They go because he didn't marry her yet. It goes back to her family. The koyarti and the chasim and chasim yeshim, because they're the ones that yashin the properties that go in after them. Nichsim alaygu. So which one is it? So the Gemara Toshma coming in. Time to learn. Shemedes Yom Shemesa. If Shemedes Yavam that passes away, your sheha. It says there that your sheha, her heirs, your sheikh suvasa, those who inherit the ksuva, chayavim b'kfurasa. So it's clear. The Brisa states clearly that it's the husband's family who yashin her ksuva. They're the ones who have to pay all the funeral expenses. Abai says, in fact, afana namitinina. We learned it in a Mishnah. Not only from this Brisa, we have a Mishnah later on. And how is that? It says later on we're going to learn about almana, a widow. Who takes care of the widow after her husband dies? She gets provided for from the state that the Yisayimim, the heirs inherited. But and the trade-off is that any earnings that she has goes to them, just like it would have been with their father. But the ein chayavin bikfurasa. They don't have to pay if their funeral expenses. They don't have to pay that. What about your share? But your share, who inherits her ksuva? Let's say she passes away. The children have to pay out to the family, her family, the ksuva. So they're the ones who pay for the burial because it's the ksuva who pays for the burial. Your share, they're the ones who pay for the burial. Okay. But what's up to do with Shemeres Yavam? We're talking now about Shemeres Yavam. This Brisa is talking about an ordinary case of a husband and a wife. And therefore, because her children, Almana's children, are the ones who inherit the ksuba, they pay for her burial expenses. So what does it do with Shemeres Yavam? I'll tell you what. Because we're talking about a case of a woman that has her own heirs and there's other Yisayim there. Which woman has it that has two sets of Yoshin, her own and her husband's? What it said is also including a case of a woman of Shemeres Yavam. So there's the husband side of the family, and then there's her family, two sets of heirs. That's not actually talking about a Shemeres Yavam because then she wouldn't have any children. But nevertheless, we're also including the case of what do you call it, Shemeres Yavam, and it seems clear from here that whoever inherits the ksuva, they're the ones who pay out for the burial. Says the Gemara. Amar Rava says, Rava, the lema, Rava says, the lema, why can't the brother, the husband to be, the yavam, say, look, Ochani Yedish, I'm taking over my brother Ruvain's assets. Oh, but Ishta ain't any kover. Why do I have to take over the responsibility, the obligation of also burying his wife? Amalei Baba says, if you're taking over, you take everything. You're not taking everything, you take nothing. The boy come on him from two angles. And we say to him, If you are going to inherit your brother, then if you're going to inherit his brother, then also you should bury his wife. Because had your brother been alive, and what would have happened then? Your brother would have had to bury him because he keeps the ksuva of his wife, so therefore he would have to bury her. So therefore, you're stepping into his shoes and you're continuing your brother's legacy, so you have to pay for her burial, even though she didn't give you anything. And he made a conversation. If you say, "Look, I'm not stepping in my brother's shoes, I don't have to bury his wife," then you think ksuvasa, give her ksuva. You're not stepping into your brother's shoes, then you have no right to ksuva either. Give it to her. So Rava said to Abaye, you misunderstood me. This is what I meant to say. You went to say this. Ani yoidish. I meant to say I am taka stepping into my brother's shoes. I'm not burying his wife. Your taina is, since I'm keeping the ksuva, I'm retaining the ksuva. Part of the ksuva deal is that I should be paying for burial rights. The imishum ksuva, you're saying she should get a ksuva, but now I'm taking it over. So therefore, in exchange of the fact that I'm keeping her ksuva, I should pay for burial. No, because I'm alive and I'm taking my brother's place. So therefore, there was never a ksuva that had to be paid. It's as if she predeceased my brother because I am my brother. And if she predeceases my brother, there's no ksuva payment at all. So over here, since while the Yavam is alive, she has no right to collect the ksuva. So there is no ksuva. It's not like I'm getting her ksuva back. There is no ksuva. No ksuva, I don't have to pay for burial. Says the Gemara, that's what the Rava wanted to say. Says the Gemara, so Abaye says back to Rava, I don't understand. Man Shamadle, who's the one who takes the ksuva literally? The Islay Medrik ksuva. In the ksuva it says that when you go ahead and you marry somebody else, when you're allowed to go ahead and marry somebody else, you can go ahead and collect the ksuva. If you take it literally, marrying a brother-in-law is not called somebody else because the brother-in-law she's bound from the Torah, and the brother-in-law is stepping into Reuben's shoes, so therefore she's not entitled to the ksuva. Who takes the word of ksuva literally? That's Beis Shammai. What do you mean Beis Shammai? Because we're having Mary Vamas. If the wife says that my husband died and I believe it, and she comes to court, we're gonna allow her to get married to somebody else based on the Eidech or whatever. Or if she comes, you're allowed to get married to somebody else because we're sure that she did her homework because she knows if the husband comes back, it messes up the rest of her life. She can no longer live with either of them. Her children are Mamzedim, so we trust her. And there's an argument Beis Shammai whether she was entitled to keep her ksuva. Beis Shammai says yes, because the ksuva says if she can marry somebody else, she can get a ksuva. Well, she's marrying somebody else, so she's entitled to ksuva. And Beis Hillel says no, because we're only doing it because she said it, not because the halacha says so. So Beis Shammai is the one who takes the ksuva literally. So, okay, fine. So we'll follow Beis Shammai. But there's another law that Beis Shammai says, and that is the following. He says, Beis Shammai says that any star that is oimid ligbois, any star that is ready to be collected is kigavud damis, as if it's been collected already. In other words, he says that a document is so powerful because it's irrefutable that it's as if you already have the money in your pocket. So it's a ksuva of a woman that she already had it, and that's what Beis Shammai holds when it comes to ksuva. So if Beis Shammai holds, and we'll see in a minute how we know that. And if Beis Shammai holds that it's as if she collected already. So even though the Yavam is still alive, stepping into Reuben's shoes, since the Reuben wrote a ksuva to the woman, it's as if she already has the ksuva. So if now her husband, the Yavam, your future brother-in-law, is going to collect the ksuva, it's as if she is giving him a ksuva, and if she is giving him a ksuva, then he has to pay for the burial rights. That's what the Abaye is asking Rava. How do you know that Beis Shammai says that? Because now we learned, and we'll have this in our site. What happens? Any site of a woman's accused of being a site, you have to go to the Beis Hamikdash and drink the water. But what happens if the husband died? What if the husband died? Before they had a chance to drink the water. Beis Shammai says, they're entitled to collect the ksuva, but Loishai says they don't drink anymore. They don't drink because there's no husband there to continue, therefore they don't drink. She has to be able to go back to her husband. But they do, and they're entitled to collect the ksuva because nothing has been proven. Well, Beis Hillel says, Oishai says, she drinks, then she collects the ksuva. If she doesn't drink, she doesn't get the ksuva. Says the Gemara before we get back to our point. She drinks. It says the pasuk that the man should bring his wife to the kohen. But there's no man here; he's dead. But Hillel meant was because we deny you the opportunity to drink. Now, so what's the Abaye's point here? But Beis Shammai says Noitlis ksuva, they take the ksuva, she says she doesn't drink. Now let's think for a second. Why is she entitled to? We have a suffix now. Is she entitled to the ksuva or not? So whenever you have a suffix, just leave things the way they are. Why is it that we allow her to collect the ksuva? It's a suffix. Suffix anoi, suffix lois anoi. So something whether she committed adultery or not. Something whether she's entitled to the ksuva. And yet, surely the money was the husband's. Something whether the woman's entitled to it or not. And we have a rule that a suffix cannot overturn a vadet. So why are we paying the ksuva? So the Gemara there says, Shabbos opinion, you think as if the husband has the money in his bank account, and the question is whether the woman can take it from him. It's all the way around. As soon as you wrote a ksuva, the document to the wife, the money belongs to her already. As if she had it already. And therefore she is the vadet. She definitely has the money. And therefore, since it's only a suffix, whether she's still entitled to or not, a suffix cannot overturn a vadet, so she keeps it. So what do we see from here? The Beishameh holds that the money is hers. So if, let's say, Shimon, the brother-in-law, is now taking over the ksuva, it's as if the woman is granting it to the brother-in-law, because the ksuva is already as if it's paid out. And if he's granting it to the brother-in-law, then the brother-in-law in return has to pay for all the funeral expenses. So why? So that's what Abai is asking Rava. So why do you rule that it's her family who pays for it? Don't we need and there doesn't exist as a raya that Beishameh holds that it's hers. Omar Rav Ashi said, Yavam nami ka'achadami. Rav Ashi says that a Yavam is not considered like a continuation of Reuben as far as this is concerned. It's considered that she's a stranger. So therefore, if you read the ksuva, take it literally. When you're entitled to marry somebody else, you're getting a ksuva. So therefore, it's as if the brother-in-law is entitled to the ksuva because you entitled to get the ksuva. And therefore, because the entitled to get the ksuva, therefore we allow her to because we're entitled to get to the ksuva, so therefore, even according to Shammai, if you take the ksuva literally, it's an achar, and there's no problem here that you can collect the ksuva. So this last thing we're asking, you're telling me that we're asking on a buyer. We're asking about you, a buyer coming out so strong that the wife is giving something over to the husband, but the ksuva clearly says that only when she can marry somebody else is she entitled to the ksuva, and the fact is that she's not allowed to marry anybody else, only the yavam. So Abaye says no, the yavam is considered like somebody else, and therefore she's entitled to the ksuva, and therefore I have a question on Rava, says Abaye. I have a question on Rava. Why are you ruling that it's her family that should pay for the funeral? It's actually his family should pay for the funeral because they're getting the ksuva. She's granting them a ksuva. So the Gemara continues. Shalach le Rava l'Abaye. So Rava, even though it's two dots, it's in a way, I'm not sure why the two dots. So Rava sent a letter to Abaye, b'yad Rav Shmaya bar Zera, via Shmaya, the son of Rav Zera, and he asked the following question. You're telling me that the wife is already entitled to collect the ksuva while in that position there, and therefore, because they're entitled to collect the ksuva in that position, and therefore she's giving something to the husband, that's what the husband really should be paying for the quarter. Says the Gemara, you're telling me, you're telling me that what a ksuva can be collected. You're arguing because my whole point was that she's not entitled to the ksuva, she's not giving anything to the husband, and therefore why should they pay for the funeral? You're telling me no, you're telling me that the ksuva is entitled to collect mechayim, and therefore as if she already had the ksuva, and then she's passing it on to the husband, and therefore the husband should pay. So and therefore you're saying to me that the husband should pay. Let me ask you a question. But Tanya, we learned Rab Abba Oimes, it says in the Brayso, Rab Abba said, Sha'alti, even though Rab Abba generally is the name of an Amoira, this is actually a Tana. So Rabbi Abba said, Sha'alti as Sumchas, I asked Sumchas. Sumchas was a student of Rab Meir. So obviously we're talking about that Tana here. I asked Sumchas, if somebody wants, let's say Reuben is a very wealthy man and Shimon was not, Ksuva is 200 dinarim, let's say, but he has asses worth 10,000 dinarim. And we said before that everything is locked in, and you cannot sell because everything is encumbered by the ksuba. But he now wants to have somehow or another to have access to these properties so that he can sell them, or at least a big chunk of them. He needs money. What should you do? Give me a remedy. Kate said, what should you do? So this is the advice that we give. This is what Sumcha said. Im kohen, if he's a kohen, yes, there's no alternative, as we'll see in a minute. Yes, so to make a big party and get her a little bit happy. The Yifayas, and be nice to her and try to appease to her, appeal to her good sense. Ksuva's 200, this is 10,000. Let me sell $5,000 worth. You're still taken care of. That's what you do. No other breda. But in Yisrael, if the brother-in-law is a Yisrael, well, this is what you do. Megarish beget. What you do is you divorce her. And you can do two things. You can either pay her out the ksuva, and the moment you pay her out the ksuva, the rest of the properties are unencumbered because you paid her out. Sell whatever you want, and then remarry her. Then you remarry her. And you sold in the interim period, so it's not a problem whatsoever. Or you can say, even if you don't sell any properties, divorce her, pay her out ksuva, and then you take her back. When you take her back this time as your wife, you no longer have that issur of selling properties, and therefore you can sell properties. And the difference is as follows: when by Yavama, when the Yavam takes over, he doesn't change the ksuva. So the ksuva, in the ksuva, it's written, any property that I bought in the past and any properties I'll buy in the future. So she's very confident, things will always work out. But when the brother-in-law takes over Reuven's place, he doesn't write whatever I buy in the future, whatever I bought in the past. It's Reuven's. Reuven's dead. He's not buying anything else. So she's very worried. But when he takes it back a second time and he rewrites the ksuva, and he says over here that anything that I buy in the future, she's comfortable, and therefore we can sell the properties even after you marry again. So that's the advice we give you. Says the Gemara, and the only properties that he cannot sell are the properties that are directly encumbered with the ksuva the second time around. Now, my question is follows, says Rabba. If you're telling me what? That already she's entitled to ksuva. Even so, why do you have to divorce her if she's already entitled to ksuva? Even when everything when there's a live, so then miyachid lo shir ksuva. Why divorce her? Just say, look, here's one property, it's worth $200, covers your whole ksuva, and therefore as if she got already paid because technically, in theory, she can collect the ksuva while she's alive. The chiv of the ksuva is already there. Bashar, Lisbon, the rest yourself. Why do you have to divorce her and go through this whole process? And it's pretty humiliating to go through a divorce. Just say to her, since you're already entitled to collect your ksuva, because here is a field that will be used for your ksuva, whatever you want it, and the rest you can sell. That's what he asked Abaya. So Abaya goes back to the time. So you want to tell me about that she has no entitlements to the property? So let me ask a question. Let me ask a question. Ask a better question. Why don't you ask me a question for the Mishnah? It says there, don't tell a woman, don't tell don't tell her that here's the value, here's the money that's going to be set aside for your ksuva. But rather, all the assets are encumbered to the ksuva. Same question there. Why? So why can't you ask me from the Mishnah? So obviously that it doesn't work that way. And even though she's entitled, we still don't want you to sell any of the properties. Says the Gemara, Rabbi said, no, why didn't ask the Mishnah? The reason why I'm asking the Mishnah is, it's not a halacha. It's just a good idea. So she feel comfortable that you tell her that, because money can disappear, that all the properties are, it's a good idea not to sell the property. It's a good idea to leave them encumbered to the ksuva. So that's the Mishnah. But over here, Rab Abbas tell you to go through this whole process. In other words, there is no other remedy, which means that she is not entitled to ksuva while they're still married at all. The Ilay Temach is not so safe for the time. It says in the later on, the purchase after his own wife. That's talking about the case of Yivama. His own wife had a Kesuvos Daf, and this will be set aside to cover your ksuva, and the rest will leave alone. It's rather that all your assets should be encumbered to your wife. Now the law is with a husband and wife. A husband's allowed to sell properties. For sure. If it comes to collecting ksuva, there's no properties available, she has a right to go to Lekuchas and collect from it. But he has a right to collect. So, but the Mishnah is saying that all the properties are encumbered. He can't sell. It's clearly when it comes to his own wife, it's just a good idea. Leave more properties, extra properties there to make sure that she feels comfortable. It's only a good idea. It's only nature taiva. Ella says Rav to Abaye, but my question of Abba Kasha, but I still have a question of Rabbi Abba and that is, if you're telling me that the ksuva is already, she's entitled to ksuva while they're alive, why bother going through the whole rigmarole of divorcing and taking it back? Just say, here is as if it's your property, as if it's already paid up, and therefore I can go sell whatever I want from Reuven's estate. Says Abaye answers back, that's not a question. You know why? I'll use your logic. Just like it's a good advice, it's not good advice, and that is Mishum Eva. You imagine the hostility that you're creating. She's constantly distrustful. She's thinking, why are you doing this? Why are you selling me aside this property? Probably you want to sell these other properties, and the money you put aside you might lose. Who knows what's going to happen to it? And I have nothing left, and she doesn't feel secure, and therefore we want you to. The Mishnah is encouraging you. Rabab is encouraging you go through this way and this go through divorce and everything else. And then she realizes that the only reason we're doing this is not because you want to divorce me, because she's constantly under the suspicion. Why are you already setting aside the money for the ksuva? For obviously you have a thought that tomorrow you're going to divorce me. So she's never comfortable and she's scared. On the other hand, if you go through the divorce and then you take her right back, she realizes you didn't divorce me because you don't want to live with me. You divorced me because you're trying to sell the properties. It's a legal loophole. And then she feels very comfortable. That's why. There's a person, this is the person that suddenly, his brother passed away and his wife now became available to him. Now, what happened was there were a few brothers available, but the law we had in Maribam is the oldest one should marry. Now, whoever marries her ends up with the entire estate. Obviously, Reuben was a rich guy. One of the other brothers wanted to have a share in Reuben's estate, but he wasn't interested in marrying her. The younger brothers, know what he was going to do? We learned this the last time in Yavamis, that if one of the brothers give her a divorce, which Mahatayra doesn't mean anything, but with Rabbanon it's like a divorce. None of the other brothers can marry her. So what happens then? The Reuven's entire they have to give her a chalitza, and one of the brothers, and Reuven's entire estate now is up for Yerusha, equal distribution amongst all the brothers. So one of the younger brothers wants to give her a get because he needs the money. But the oldest brother actually wants to marry her. He wants to marry her. So, one of the younger brothers wanted to disqualify her. The get. He said to her, "What do you think? Why you want to ruin my life? Because you want to have a chelik, a portion of the Yerusha. Then I know, I'll tell you what. I'll give you right now half. Don't have to do that. I will give you a half of the estate. Don't throw the get because I really want to marry her." Okay, but what happened was after he married his girl and she wanted, as we'll see more tomorrow, she wanted, the younger brother who said, come and give me half the estate. And the older brother said, I changed my mind, I'm not giving you anything. So they went to the Torah. The Rav there was Rabbi Yisrael. Rabbi Yisrael said, Kiva the Rabbanah said clearly that you cannot sell any of Reuben's properties because they're all encumbered to the ksuva. Then Avagad Zavin, even though Shimon sort of sold it because he gave half of it to his brother, Lahav is vina. It's not a sale. The Tanya will let them rise it. Mishi Mays, if somebody died, Reuben died, left behind a wife, and she's waiting now for Shimon to marry. Money left over your property worth 100 money, 100 times 100, 10,000. But the entire ksuva was only, let's say, a mana. She was not a mana the first time. La Yimker. Shimon has no right to sell the other $9,900 of the property. She called the chasav achrayin to ksuvasa. The entire assets are achrayin to ksuvasa. So we see clearly that what? You cannot sell it. Is that the case? Are you telling me that the rabbi said don't sell? If you did sell and you defied the words of the rabbis, the sale is not a valid sale. But now we learned a couple of days ago, if the woman was engaged and she received an inheritance and sold it while she was engaged, Beis Shammai says Timka she can sell it. Beis Hillel says no, like Timka don't sell it, but they all agree and it works. If he sold it, it's valid. So they asked, so there's an argument to Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef said it's not a valid sale. The younger brother is not entitled to zilch. He's entitled to zilch. And Abaye said, no, that if you sold it, and therefore you have to give your brother half the estate. So what do you do? They sent a letter to Reb Chanina Papi. They related on the conversation between Rabbi Yosef and Abaye and asked Reb Chanina, what do you think? He said back, I agree with Rabbi Yosef that the sale is not valid. Omar Abaye said, Otu Reb Chanina Bar Papi, keep it totally. Reb Chanina Bar Papi, somebody. What did he add to this whole discussion? He didn't add anything. So why in the world should I listen to him? He didn't bring any proof, evidence. He just said he holds like Rabbi Yosef. So therefore, what? Why should I give him anything? So the Gemara keeping me like nosebands. So how did he beautify? In other words, how did he enhance the argument to me? What did he add, contribute to our argument? He just said he likes Rabbi Yosef, and therefore what? So therefore they weren't happy. They sent the same conversation, the discussion, the dispute, the Kamed Rabbi Yuma B'rei Rabbi Chuma. They sent it to Rabbi Yuma, the son of Rabbi Chuma. Sholcha Kedabaya. He said, I agree with Abaye, but what he added was the Amar Bar Rabbi Yosef Time Achina. If Rabbi Yosef finds other support to himself, Sholchuli, I want you to send me that so I can look at it and see whether he's right or not. So not for Rabbi, that gave incentive to Rabbi Yosef to find some other support. He searched by Ashkech and he found the Tanya will in the Brisa. What happens if Reuven owed Shimon $100? And then Vames, Reuven died. Shimon owed Reuven $100. And then Reuven died, and now childless. So Shimon now was going to marry Reuven's wife. That means Shimon now is about to inherit Reuven's estate. So Shimon now is about to inherit the debt that he owes to Reuven. So the mace, and then Reuven died. They niach shemelas yavam. But the only thing, the new variable here is there's a wife. Leah, who's married to Reuven, is there. So the question is, does Shimon have to pay to the wife or to the estate? So it says the Bryce, Shimon shouldn't say, since I'm eventually going to become the sole heir of Reuben, he says, as if I already have the debt, I own it. We extract the money from Shimon and we say to him, everything is encumbered to the Kesuvah. So what you do, and only karka. So the yikach behen karka, buy a piece of land, who pay this, and he will get the dividends. Amalei Abaye says, yeah. So what do we see clearly from here? We see from here that that there's no. He has no right to make a sale. He has no right to say because it's mine, I don't have to pay the debt. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye said, Dilma the Tovale of the lay, maybe it's just a good idea. We were saying, look, if you're going to be pay yourself the debt, the money will be gone in a few days. But if you're going to take that money that you owe and buy a property, there'll be more land. It's good for you as well. Amalei Tana Tani, so Rabbi Yosef said back to Abaye. So you're arguing with me. You're saying that sales is a valid sale, but just giving good advice. Better pay the money and buy land. Tana Tony Maitzi. It says clearly and Maitzi, which means we force Shimon to pay the money. You tell me it's only a good advice. So it seems clearly from this brisa that Rabbi Yosef is right. Now what? That the brother has to does not have to pay the younger brother anything because he had no right to make this deal in the first place. And they sent this brisa to Rabbi Nechumah, like he promised him. He came back and he says, Rabbi Yosef, the son of Menyume, said, I guess it was his son, Zu ain't a mission. This brisa is not correct. There's something wrong. There's an error in this brisa, and you cannot use it as a corroboration. Now the Gemara wants to know my timing. Why isn't this brisa correct? If you tell the brisa is not correct, because we're talking about money here. This brisa is talking about money, right? He owes money to Reuven, and therefore we're saying no, you cannot keep the money, pay it over. Why does it pay it over? Because it's encumbered to her Kesuvah. But we learned before that that's halacha, that metaltlin are not indebted to the Kesuvah. So why does he have to pay the money? Because she has no right to it. Because she only has right to the Kesuvah and all the assets which are encumbered for the Kesuvah, but not metaltlin. Said, well, that you can't say the Bryce is wrong. Dilma Rab Meir, and the author of the Bryce is Rab Meir, and in this respect, we don't agree with Rab Meir, but everything else is right. He hold the Tatum are indebted to Ksubah. So why is the Bryce wrong? The element from the Amal, he said to her, At lav balad devorim b'diyad. He says to her, when you come into the picture, I borrowed money from your husband, I owe the money to your husband, I'm going to yashin your husband, and therefore I don't have to pay you. I never borrowed the money from you, so you can't come in and tell me I have to pay because this money has to go towards Yiksubah. I have nothing to do with you. So what are you talking about? Deal with Rab Nassim. Maybe this follow Rab Nassim, which is accepted in halacha. That's called shibuda de Rab Nassim, and we already had this previously. Shibuda de Rab a few times. Shibuda Rab Nassim means if Reuven owes money to Shimon and Shimon owes money to Levi, then Reuven owes money to Levi. And there's a whole question where Levi can go directly to Reuven, he has to go by Shimon, but because ultimately this money belongs to Levi. So over here also, so Shimon owes money to Reuven. Reuven owes Ksuvah money to his wife, and therefore the wife says, "What do you mean I'm not involved here? I am. Ultimately, you owe me the money, and therefore take the money and buy property." So the brisa should be a valid brisa. What's wrong with the brisa? What's his Ram Nassim? The time Ram Nassim says, if you owe your friend $100, your friend owes $100 somebody else. How do you know that we take out by force from the first guy and we deliver it to the third guy? It says the Nas son that if you stole and you swore false and you have to pay now a penalty of a fifth, the Nas son you should give. So the one you're guilty to, that mean? That means you have to pay to the one that ultimately owns the principal. And who is that? The ultimate lender. So you have Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Reuven owes Shimon $100, but Shimon owes Levi $100. Then Levi is the one who really owns the principal. Reuven owes Levi. Ella, the pshat is like Ashkan Tana. You know why the price is a default or faulty? Like Ashken Tana, we don't find any Tana. The Machmetrek Chumra B'Ksuvah. Here we're taking on two Chumras. We're taking on Rab Meir that says that even metalclin, portable items, are encumbered to the Ksuvah, and that is Ksuvah, number one. And number two, Shibuda Rab Nassim. How does he come in the picture? Because since Shimon owes the money to Reuven, and Reuven owes the money to the wife. Ella Ikra Meir Ikra Nassim. Either one, you can't follow. That's why this brisa is not a valid brisa, and that's why we have a machlekes between Abaya and Rabbi Yosef. And Rabbi Yosef couldn't prove his point because this brisa that he brought a proof to that the sale wasn't a sale is not a valid brisa, and therefore Abaya says the older brother has to pay the younger brother out because he made up with him and he had every right to sell it. Omar Rava says, now, Im Kain, the Shemana L'Abaya. Remember when I had this discussion with Abaya as well, the Omar, he told me, Zuaini Mishnah, he told me about this Bryce, it's not a valid Mishnah, but I had no idea what he meant. Now I understand why he said it's not a valid Mishnah. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll continue tomorrow morning with Hashem live in Mizrahi.
Thank you very much. It's a big